All right, this will be the last section of chapter 3 is 3.5, and it talks about a 5-number summary and box plots. You've probably seen 5-number summaries before, and I believe you've also seen box plots. You probably heard them called box and whiskers, or that's what they're referred to as, and that's fine. I have no problem with people calling them box and whiskers. That's how I refer to them as sometimes, so that's totally fine. A box and whisker or box plot is based off of our 5-number summary. So we're going to start with our 5-number summary and then move on from there. Our 5-number summary consists of 5 numbers. Shocking. And as you write them, label them and do them in order. And they are the lowest value or your minimum, and then Q1, Q2, Q3, and your maximum value or the highest value. And those 5 numbers give you an idea of where the center of our data is, and we can determine the spread of the data by comparing how far away those different values are from each other. If the difference between or the distance between those 5 numbers are the same, then you have a nice, neat kind of spread of data. It'd be like a uniform. But if the center part, so Q1 to Q3, is more squished together and those whiskers kind of go further away, then you have a nice, neat, normal distribution where the bulk of the data is in the middle and then those tails spread out evenly on either side. And so the more you look at a 5-number summary, or even easier, the more you look at box plots, the easier it is to kind of turn that box plot or that 5-number summary into a histogram type graph, or where you get an idea of the graph of the distribution. So what kind of curve does it look like? The 5-number summary can be found completely on our graphing calculator using that one variable statistics. It gives us the minimum value, then Q1, Q2, Q3, and the maximum. So once you've put the list into your calculator, that calculator, your calculator, will find the rest of that information for you. So let's get started on how to do this. First, take a second and enter all of this data into your calculator. And then once you've done that, we'll go through and I'll show you how to actually find all of your information. Okay, hopefully you've had a chance to put all of these data values into your calculator. Now we'll go through and I'll show you where you can find this. So we have a calculator here. I have all my data listed in my data set. Exit out of this, go to stat, calc, one variable, and I put all of my data points into list 2. So I want to make sure that in the list I have list 2. I also want to make sure that my frequency list is blank. The last time we used this, we were doing stuff with grouped data from frequency distributions. So we had a value in there for frequency list. Get rid of that now, and then go down and calculate. Now, when you're looking at this information, it's incredibly important to kind of look at it and make sure it makes sense to you. You may have noticed when I put in my values, or when you looked at the values in my list, there was a mistake. I noticed that mistake when I went here to this one variable statistics, but I didn't really check over my data points as I was entering them, and that could cost you a lot of mistakes. But I caught it here because I went and I looked at my minimum value. My minimum value is 4. That triggered something in my head. I was like, I don't remember entering anything that small. So go back and double check. And it looks like instead of entering 40 from the first value, I entered 4. So either make sure you check after you've entered all of your data points to go back and make sure you enter them correctly. Or when you're going ahead and doing calculations, check to see if it makes sense. And I highly recommend doing the first thing I suggested, which is before you do anything else, after you've entered your data, look at the data and make sure that it looks correct. So now that I've changed that, now I'll go back, do those same calculations. Now my minimum is 38. That looks better. So you'll notice that there's arrows on the side of your calculator here. That tells you that you can scroll up or scroll down. I'm going to scroll down all the way, and then the last 5 numbers are my 5-number summary. So minimum, and then Q1, median, we already talked about it, was Q2, Q3, and then max is that highest value. So those are the 5 values that I want to write down for my 5-number summary. And you can write median or Q2. I don't have a issue with either of those. Your median and your Q3 are the same value, and that is okay. And then our maximum value or highest value is 43. And multiple data points can be the same. So in this case, Q2 and Q3 were equal. That's okay. That just tells us that there's a lot of data points around 40. So in this case, since they're all whole numbers, it means we had a lot of data points that were exactly 40. Now we'll talk about our box plot or box and whisker, which is a visual representation of the 5-number summary. You start off by making the box. The box consists of a left and a right side. The left side is Q1, the right side is Q3, and then your median, Q2, is in the middle. So you start by drawing your Q2, or sorry, that's Q1. You start by drawing Q1, Q3, and then you make your box. And then inside of that box, you put Q2. And then you have your minimum value, a maximum value, and you draw a line out to each of those points. And that's how you make your box and whisker plot. Below your box and whisker plot, you will have a number line. That way I can see what values you have. And depending on the scale, you may also want to label your points. So Q1, Q2, Q3, min, max, all of those, actually label them what they're supposed to be, especially if they don't fall exactly on a line. I'll show you kind of what that means when we do some examples. But I also want to show you what we have to do when we are dealing with outliers. So when you have outliers, they are not a part of your whisker. They're past your whisker, and you show that something's an outlier by putting an asterisk. So those asterisks represent that they're an outlier. And so you don't have to you don't write in your upper and your lower fence on your box and whisker plot. They're just there to help you make sure it's drawn correctly. Here, the lower fence may be here, and your upper fence may be somewhere up here. But those 2 points are lower outliers. They fall outside of the fence, and so we mark them with asterisks to show that they are in fact outliers. And then for B, we have outliers that are above our average. And then for C, we have a nice, neat box plot, no outliers, and so you don't have to have those. Notice all of those box plots are above the number line. That's what it should look like. You have your number line below your box plot, and then above that number line is the actual box plot. So here I give you the 5 data points. We are just going to create the box plot. Pause the video, give it a shot, and then unpause to check to see if you did it correctly, and we'll go through it together. So our lowest value is 36. We have our first side of our box at 38. Our middle is 39. Q3 is 40. And then our upper whisker 42. That's what it should look like. And now, what I was saying about labeling them, what I would like you to do so that I know exactly where you're trying to draw your graphs, I want you to go ahead and label those data points. You still have your number line, but I want you to label those so I know where you're trying to have that marked. And that is what your box plot should look like. Above your number line. All right, last example for this section and this chapter. Here is a data set. I want you to check to see if there are any outliers in this data set, and then I want you to make a correct box plot. So pause this video, give this a shot on your own, and then come back, unpause, and we will check to see together. All right, so as we're going through, first thing we have to do is find a 5-number summary. It's asking us to make a box plot, which means we need the 5-number summary. It's also asking us for outliers, and so we need Q1 and Q3 to determine that. So when we are looking for a 5-number summary, we are going to go to our calculator. Now, I've already put all of that data into list 1. So all of those data points are in list 1 already. So I'm going to go back, go to calc 1 variable statistics, make sure it's list 1 this time. Go down to calculate, and now I have my 5-number summary. So my 5-number summary is 42, 50.5. So let's go through 42, 50.5, 54.5, I believe was the next one. 54.5, 57.5, and then my max was 69. So min, Q1, Q2, Q3, max. Now, step 2, we have to find any outliers that we have. So step 1, we go through, we do 50.5 minus, or 57.5 minus 50.5. We're going to multiply that by 1.5. And then we find our lower fence, which is Q1 minus 1.5 IQR. So 50.5 minus 10.5, and that gives us a lower fence of 40. And then we have our upper fence of Q3 plus 1.5 IQR, which gives us 57.5 plus our 10.5. So 57.5 plus 10.5 gives us 68. So now we can go through and we can start writing down all of our important pieces of information. So 42 and 50.5. So here we have 41.2. So 42 and then 50.5. This one 100% needs a label because it is in between marks. Now I'm going to label all of them because I prefer that. That way I don't have to have a ruler and make sure I'm incredibly accurate. If I just list it and it's a little bit past or before the actual tally mark, it's not a big deal. So we got 50.5. Next, we're at 54 and 57.5. So 54.5 and 57.5. We got our rectangle here. And then the last one is 69, which comes here. And then our upper and our lower fence. So our lower fence, and you don't need to put these in. I'm going to, just to show you where they would be. Lower fence, and then upper fence. So we have now run into our first issue. And that issue is that 69 is outside of our fence. So no problem down here. I'm going to draw a line connecting the 42, my minimum value, up to Q1. Now I have an issue at 69. It's an outlier. So step one, make it an asterisk and label it. Now, step two, where do I draw my whisker? I still need a whisker, but where do I go? In order for us to draw our whisker, we have to go back up to our data set and find the highest value that's inside of our fence or equal to our fence in this case. And so the next value is 68. Now, if 68 was also outside of our upper fence, then that would be an outlier as well. But it's not. It's on our fence. And if it's on our fence, we're going to consider it okay. And so that means down here, this value gets marked as 68. And I draw that whisker in. Now I drew it to 68 because 68 was the next highest data point in my data set. A common mistake on these box plots is that you draw the line out to wherever the upper or the lower fence is, and that is not accurate. Your whisker must stop at an actual data point inside of your data set. So in this case, they happen to be the same. 68 is my upper fence, but it's also a data point, and it's the fact that it's a data point that's important. So make sure you always stop your whisker at an actual data point from your data set. In this case, it was that 68. All right, and again, that is what your box plot should look like. And that is a conclusion, or our conclusion, to chapter 3. If you have any questions over any of the material we've covered, please use the help form and let me know.